And everyone, yeah, Sherry, as soon as the questions come in, if you could just hold them off to the end, and I'll try my best to answer them. But yes, good afternoon, everyone, on this lovely rainy day. So here we're just going to talk about defining your brand strategy with AI. So just a rundown of the next few minutes so you guys get an understanding of what we're going to talk about. Obviously, some of you asked questions beforehand, which is great. Again, if you ever do come to any of my webinars, feel free to ask as many questions as you can, because what I'm going to do is try and factor them into the presentation. But we're going to talk about branding, a bit about business insights, how to make customers feel a little bit, especially through prompts, talk about your business USPs, challenging your brand, and then hopefully some key takeaways that you guys can go away with and make some changes, or at least start to implement or think about. But before that, who am I? My name is Ian de Cordova. I've had the pleasure of working in marketing sales for 15 plus years, just to show my lovely age. I cover a wide range of different topics, especially from a mentoring perspective. So if you guys need any help with any of these, please do let me know. In my spare time, I do have other businesses. I seem to be a workaholic. I love house renovating, currently building a house at the moment, and then mentoring small businesses. I've had the pleasure of working with big brands as well as small businesses, so I understand both the larger scale need and obviously the fact that some of us may have, £10 a day to spend on marketing. So I completely get it. But as I mentioned before, feel free to ask as many questions as you can. These are some of the questions that got fired over that I just picked out. Of course, one of the main ones was how best to use AI in your brand strategy. I'm going to reflect on one of my companies that I own and how I use AI to try and build that brand strategy, so you get to see it from my perspective as well. My small business, there's only 3 of us in there at the moment. And again, we're looking to make it grow. So how can we do that strategically? Because we're all limited on time. We're not full-time, we're part-time. So again, we want to try and make sure as much time and effort is put into the right thing. So we use AI to try and help that. However, I want to try and start it off by saying what branding is not, because a lot of people seem to think they understand branding. So at least from my perspective, branding is not all about the logo and tagline. I know a lot of businesses worry about, okay, what your logo looks like and what the tagline is. For the most part, that's only going to be something that you dwell on. A lot of people look on it for the first 2-3 seconds and then go, okay, what next? They're not really going to focus on the logo that much. They're not really going to focus that much on your tagline. I always say try and put some of your keywords in there. So one of ours is I run a coffee business, is luxury coffee beans. So again, you put in keywords in there like luxury and of course what you do. But then just please be aware, it's not always about this. It's not always going to be about your product or your service. It's something you offer, but customers will decide whether to buy yours or somebody else's based on a whole spectrum of different offerings. So say, for example, with my coffee, it's not always going to be about the coffee. It's about the packaging, it's about the messaging, it's about the whole holistic perspective. So for me, making sure that is right, not just with the coffee aspect, but everything else helps to build the brand. Branding is when you create something where individuals develop an emotional, irrational connection to what you offer. And if you reflect on who you are and how you've connected with some brands, of course, you will connect to a brand differently to somebody else will. You will look on a brand differently, or you will interpret a brand different to how somebody else will. Again, it's because we're all emotionally wired different. You can say sometimes we're not irrational, hence why we have arguments and conversations with others, but we're all wired differently. So it's kind of your connection to a brand. What does that brand symbolize, and how do you reflect on that brand? Your brand is always going to be your reputation to your audience. And as I said before, your audience is going to be that emotional, irrational person, especially if any of you do any marketing on Facebook, for example, or any of the Meta platforms, you will always see that there's going to be an interest aspect where they can say, okay, I want to target individuals with this particular interest and not necessarily just from a demographic perspective, because again, our interests are linked to our emotional state and our irrational state. Consumers, I wouldn't even say customers just yet, but consumers are always looking for that connection, always looking for that meaning. Some look for communities or tribes. Again, we all love to be part of something, especially if it's a movement or something big. So how can you create a brand that is going to allow people to be part of a community or at least a shared experience? Technically, branding is always about a preference because, again, as I said, it's that emotional, that irrational way of perceiving something. It's down to a preference. And when you look at it, there's many different ways of deciding what your preference is going to be. Some people look at it from a color perspective. Some people look at it from an overall product perspective, whether it's, a luxury type aspect or if it's like a more cheaper alternative. But everybody's going to look at a brand differently. So what is it that you're trying to perceive with your brand that people can say, okay, that is my preference. I choose this brand over an alternative. When it comes to my coffee business, of course, I need to understand who the audience is. So not sure how many people drink coffee on this call, but let's just say per day, there's a lot of people who drink coffee. As you can see here, I drink coffee. I've moved it up now. I used to be 2 to 3 a week, and now I'm doing at least 1-ish a day. But some people, they do 3, some people do 4, some people do 5. Everybody uses coffee differently. Some people use it as fuel, while some people use it as a morning ritual, something they look forward to waking up to. Everybody's going to be different. But a bit of background, as you can see, 98 million cups of coffee drank in the UK every day. Globally, it's over 1 billion. Ironically, the UK is not the most coffee addict nation. It's actually the Nordics, Norway to be exact, where people on average drink about 4 or 5 cups of coffee a day, which is crazy to me. But as a business, I needed to try and find out some key answers. So to try and think about what questions am I going to ask. So in terms of generative AI, I use both ChatGPT and I use Copilot just to see if there's any differences. But when it came to building the brand strategy, I had to think about, okay, what questions do I want to ask about my coffee beans? Because at the moment, I import coffee from Jamaica and I sell it here in the UK. So who would buy my coffee beans? Of course, as you can see, 98 million people drink coffee a day, or 98 million cups of coffee are drank every day. But not everybody's going to be buying coffee to drink it. You have to think, okay, some people are at work, some people go to specific places like cafes and so forth to have coffee. So they're not necessarily going to be the ones buying my coffee. It's for the people who are potentially going to be brewing at home. How can I describe my ideal customer? Okay, well, as I mentioned, it's the people who love coffee. Now, my price point of my coffee is way more than a standard bag of beans in a supermarket. To give you some idea, a bag of coffee in a supermarket is between £4 to £7 if you're really pushing the boat out. Now, my bags of coffee are between 35 and 45. So I automatically know I am eliminating the lower end of the market, which would probably be a lot of the buyers. So when I factor that in, who would be my ideal customer? Is there a specific age, interest, behavior type that they would have? Again, if somebody's spending 35 to 45 pounds on coffee, you'd assume their interests are a little bit different. Their age is probably a little bit older, thinking, okay, they may have a little bit more disposable income. And then another question I asked was, based on coffee lovers, who is more likely to benefit from what I offer? So, of course, I was thinking about that. So then I'd go over to ChatGPT and I'd go over to Copilot and just say, look, based on the specialty coffee consumption trends, who is most likely to buy premium coffee from a small business? That would just give me an idea. What would motivate someone to choose an artisan coffee bean over a supermarket one? And then how could I position my product to appeal to both flavor-focused and health-conscious customers? Now, again, the reason why my coffee is so expensive is because Jamaican coffee and Ethiopian coffee are the best coffee in the world. You can definitely taste the difference to the normal stuff that you buy in a supermarket. Again, ours is fair trade. Again, I appreciate some coffees in supermarkets may say they're fair trade, but when you're selling a bag of coffee for, as I say, 3 to 5 pounds, is that actually fair trade? Probably not, right? So how do we position ourselves in the market to be like, look, we are that luxury brand company. This is what we're going to focus on, and this is who we're going to go after. We always knew that you cannot control people's feelings, but you can influence them. So for us, it was saying, okay, how can we influence them to buy our coffee rather than say you have to buy it? What could be the allure? What could be the draw? And that is part of the branding, the overall branding that we have for the company. This is another example. It's kind of your story. I assume we all drink water on this call, whether it's tap water or bottled water. Some people will say, okay, I'm only ever going to drink Evian. Some people may say, I'm going to drink Voss or Highland Springs. Now, obviously, all these waters come with a different price point, but let's pretend the pH levels and everything else is the same. At the end of the day, what you are doing with this water is buying a preference. Now, obviously, the Aqua, the Evian, and the Voss are a little bit more expensive. So when it comes to branding, they've made the bottles in a particular way that doesn't just necessarily showcase the water, but showcase a particular lifestyle of the individuals who do buy this water. And again, the price point reflects it. At the end of the day, they're all in plastic, apart from Voss, which is in glass. So, the Evian and the Aqua, same water, just a different type of bottle. That's the branding. It's the lifestyle that you're portraying. Most people would probably not feel, I don't want to say ashamed, but not bothered by walking around with an Evian bottle of water, an Aqua bottle of water. You'd almost want to show it off, rather than if you'd walk around with another brand, a cheaper brand of water. Even though it does the same exact thing, it's the perception of that brand that people are displaying onto others, that I can afford this water, I can drink this water, this is good water. And of course, those who drink Voss water, again, it's the same concept. It's just a glass bottle, but at the end of the day, it's just water. But again, as individuals, we have all created that emotional tie to a particular brand because of what it portrays. We're all irrational. Sometimes people may just go, look, it's budget. I don't care. I'm just going to buy the cheapest water. While some people, I said, will just want to portray that particular lifestyle. So have a think about that when you're reviewing your brand. When you compare it like for somebody else, what is it that you're trying to get across? Is it something different, or is it, similar to your competitors? So for us, we said, okay, this is our problem statement. We believe that coffee should be something that you wake up to every day and love. It's not that kind of mediocre coffee brand, borderline Bovril, where you get it and you're like, great, this is purely a caffeine kick rather than something that you're going to enjoy. And we know that there is a growing interest in the specialty coffee brand. I mean, artisan coffee houses are popping up everywhere. We know that people are always after that specialty coffee. And unfortunately, we are in a market now, as in my company, where we know a lot of people are using specialty coffee when they don't actually give specialty coffee. So how do we, propel our brand so it shines above as real specialty coffee business? So there were some questions that we had to ask. What's broken in the typical coffee buying experience, if there is anything? Why do people feel that they overpay for coffee? What are they really paying for? Again, sometimes it's just the word specialty coffee when it's not actually specialty coffee. And what makes customers question the quality of their coffee? So again, some of the prompts that we went to were, who are the people frustrated with the current coffee options? What are they missing? List pain points people experience when buying coffee beans online. And again, we didn't have to say beans, we could just say coffee, but we specialize in beans. Help me understand the value versus cost issue in the coffee market for a consumer perspective. And then, of course, give some examples of repetitive coffee-related headaches my brand could solve from home brewers. Now, I used to look at my competitors for the last one, and I used to go on their reviews. I always say to businesses, do the same. If you have a competitor, don't look at the 5-star reviews, don't look at the 4-star reviews. Look at the 1-star reviews or the 2-star reviews. See what people are complaining about. Can you turn those faults or those failures of that business into a positive on your business and then shine about it? You can still do that. Or you can ask a generative AI bot, which is what I'm doing now as well. And then, of course, you have to go, look, How do I solve their problem? What can I do? What is going to be my solution? Now, again, not sure how many people drink coffee on this call, but there's multiple grades to coffee. And we only deliver grade A coffee. And there's one above grade A, which is a pea berry. Now, pea berries are very, very rare. And grade A coffee, sorry, is very hard to come by. But for us, that's what we're going to focus on. And that's what we're going to drive. We're going to send it right to the customer's door. As soon as they order it, I can get next day delivery, depending where they are. Sometimes I can get same day delivery. But the whole idea is to give them an experience from the time that they buy the coffee or start searching for the coffee all the way till it ends up at the door. So some of the questions, again, that we had to ask was, what is the simplest, most powerful solution that my business can offer? Again, I've given the generative AI the description of the business, the bio of the business, what we're about, who we work with, and so forth. So it has all that information. What benefits does my coffee offer? Again, some people may look at it from a health perspective. Some people may look at it from a price perspective. So how can I talk about the benefits there? How do I make my coffee more accessible and less intimidating for customers? Now, obviously, I only started doing this coffee business 2 years ago. And for me, if you'd asked me 3 years ago about coffee, I would just say, look, just give me anything. I don't really mind. But it's that typical thing when you're allowed to experience something that little bit more exclusive or a little bit more tantalizing to your taste buds, then you go, wow, I don't want to sound like a snob, but I don't think I can drink the cheaper version of coffee anymore because I've gotten used to something else. And that's going to be the same across everything. When you buy certain clothes and the clothes feel so much better and look so much better on you, there are certain brands that you would never go back to. And it's the same with hair care products and all the rest, right? So for me, it was that enlightenment with coffee. So some of the prompts that I had to ask my employer of the month was, what are effective ways to make premium coffee beans more accessible and appealing to everybody? How can I change how people think about coffee? Because again, is it that, I'm just using it for fuel, or can I have it as something where, they look forward to it every day? It's part of their ritual now. They just want to have that coffee. That's what's going to get them out of bed in the morning. What tools or messaging can help that casual coffee buyer feel more confident in choosing the right beans? And again, when it comes to you as a business, you have that kind of expectation to educate consumers on who you are and what you do. What are unique approaches that I can take to differentiate my coffee reseller brand from competitors? As you all know, there's quite a lot of coffee brands out there. So how can my business, say leaps and bounds of everybody else? What elements of service, packaging, or storytelling can my brand, can I make unforgettable about my brand? So, of course, as a result of that, I no longer distribute coffee in a brown box. My boxes, even though they cost me that little bit more, it's given that premium look and feel to it. It tells a story not only about the brand, but about the farmer, depending on the coffee that you get. There's different, say, little presents in the boxes with the coffee. It's not just, here's your coffee. So again, I got a lot of ideas from my employer of the month. So there's two different things. There's a brand positioning and the brand framing. When it comes to your brand positioning, again, if we just look at water, of course, it's refreshing, hydrating, bottle with purity, because positioning is how you position your brand in the mind of potential consumers relative to your competitors. But when it comes to framing, it's all about finding the points of comparison that will favor your brand. So again, I appreciate it's just water, but it's nourishing, purely yours. Our bottle elegance flows from pristine springs. So again, it starts to become part of not just a tagline, but this is what, our bottle of water in this case offers, and this is why you should have it. So how can you position your brand, but then how can you frame it in the minds of others where they go, okay, this makes sense. I would choose this over anything else. So again, you can ask generative AI to try and help you position and frame your brand. Because guess what? When you do it correctly, especially around positioning, You try and understand what the customer wants, what you do best, and what your competitors do best. And what you always want to do is try and find that lovely sweet spot about, okay, what does a customer want and how do you overlap with what you do best? And when I mean what do you do best, it's what are your unique selling points, your USPs of the business. Again, the coffee one, for example, we are luxury coffee. We're premium bean coffee. That is one of the things that we win at. There's others, but that's the main one where it's a premium grade A bean or the Peaberry bean. Of course, what you don't want to do is lose out to competitors. What are your competitors doing that you're not doing, that the customer goes, okay, I will definitely choose a competitor over yourself. Again, have a look at, let's say, a handful of your competitors, and then just look at their USPs. What are they doing? Again, look at their reviews, find out what they're doing, what they're talking about, and then how can you move what you're losing out on into like that fair game / you winning. And of course, if you're doing something amazing and your competitor's doing something amazing, then it's stalemate. How do you get a customer to choose you over the competitor? What else can you add? What is the value add to your product or your service that you're offering? So what makes your business unique? For me, it's aimed at coffee lovers who crave that quality without compromise. As I said before, we deliver grade A coffee beans. They're ethically sourced. We work very closely with the farmers. We don't ask for discounts on the farmers because we know for them it's really hard, especially in Jamaica. So we don't ask for discounts. All we're doing at the moment is taking their coffee and selling it over here. So we know it's ethically sourced. We know for the majority of them, they're family farmers, right? And as you can imagine, growing coffee on the steep slopes of a mountain is probably not the easiest. So a lot of it is handpicked. We don't have, or they don't have the luxury of machines. So it's kind of getting that across to customers. So again, the questions I had to ask ChatGPT or Copilot was, what makes my coffee offering different from competitors? How can I position my brand to highlight quality, ethics, and experience? What emotional or lifestyle appeal does my coffee brand have? How do I make specialty coffee more accessible to everyday drinkers? And again, that was the main thing for me. How do I change mindset of that everyday coffee drinker just to someone who wants to enjoy it that little bit more? So again, some of the prompts that I was asking was, look, comparing my grade A coffee beans to typical supermarket beans, what sets me apart? What are going to be my USPs? Help me craft some of these USPs that combines premium quality, ethical sourcing, and customer experience. What feelings or lifestyle associations can I use to make my coffee brand more relatable and desirable? So again, getting some of these answers back, and I'm not going to say that for all the prompts I asked, I was getting back exactly what I wanted. So I had to dive a little bit deeper. But for the majority of these prompts, I was getting an idea. Okay, this is what I can use. Let me have a look at competitors. Okay, they're not talking about that. This is how I'm going to structure the brand. This is how I'm going to structure the strategy. This is what I'm going to be focusing on, especially from a customer perspective. So when it came to describing the business, now I've kind of got an idea of, okay, this is the value proposition, this is the impact, and this is the benefits. These are my USPs. And okay, this is how I need to position the business overall. Okay, I need to look at the tone of voice. How do I want to frame this? How do I want people to understand this? Brand, obviously I'm not speaking to them, but even if it's on the website, how do I want it to come across? And then, of course, the look and feel of it. Again, it's if I'm offering premium beans, and bearing in mind I cannot change the packaging of, the farmers, how can I make the website? How can I, position the brand to look and feel in a particular way that we are, yes, a reseller, but we are sourcing the best coffee out there. We have tasted the best coffee, and the whole idea is for us to give it to you as a consumer. So, of course, that went into the whole messaging and design aspect. So when it came to framing it, how do I make the customer feel? And I think a lot of people, especially when branding and marketing, don't understand it's all about how the customer feels. If you think back to the water, again, some of you would have felt differently or started to think, okay, that's the water that I normally go for. But it's not, the end all. You could choose any water, but you've chose a particular one because it's positioned and it's framed in a particular way. So it's the same with your brand. How do you position and frame it in a particular way? So for us, we said, look, we're not just selling coffee. We're trying to create moments, that moments of wonder where people get that package and, they don't just discard the box straight away because the box tells a story. The elements within the packaging tells a story as well. It's that whole, okay, this is like what I expect every package to be. We spent, I don't know, days going through brainstorming what it should be. And I think we've nailed it on the head. Because for us, we source the coffee with care, the roast to precision by the farmers or the plantation owners. And for us, we're taking it and just elevating it, giving it that luxury feel. So some of the questions I had to ask, or answer as a business, I should say, is how can I make customers feel emotionally connected to my coffee brand? What kind of brand personality would make my coffee feel warm, trustworthy, and premium? How can I position my coffee as part of a comforting daily ritual? And one of the last ones, how can I use storytelling to make my brand memorable and emotionally resonate? So again, as I mentioned before, customers will always emotionally go towards a brand that they identify with. And look, we can't go across every spectrum of emotion, but there are certain ones that you can appeal to. And for us, if we are trying to change the perspective of, okay, you're not just having coffee in the morning just for fuel, but making it, I can't wait to have this, that emotionally is going to be different to the fuel drinkers. So again, some of the prompts that we had to ask about how to frame the brand for that emotional impact was, what emotional triggers or stories can I use to build a deeper connection with the audience? Because originally we were trying to find out who the audience was. Okay, we've identified potentially who this is. How can we build that connection with them? How can I frame my coffee beans as something that brings joy, calm, and energy to every day? Of course, crafting that brand story that evokes positive emotions and sticks with customers. How do I highlight ethical sourcing, small batch quality, or community impact in a way that customers feel good about buying from me? For the majority of coffee drinkers out there, at least coffee businesses, I should say, a lot of them focus on, that community impact, that sustainability angle. And let's be honest here, coffee is probably one of the least sustainable things on the planet. It's shipped or flown from around the world, right? Depending on how many Starbucks or Costas that you count on the side of the road, you can imagine that's a lot of coffee coming into the country just for these companies, let alone the small coffee shops and then the people at home. So for us, we're trying to focus on it from a different ethical perspective and not necessarily the sustainable aspect. So when it comes to your brand, all I'd ask you to do is just have a think about some of these. When it comes to a proposition, what are you trying to do? Is it invoke that feeling of freedom, the promise, adventure? If you buy my product or engage in my services, it's that wealthier side, it's that members club type feel. Or is it just a cheap and cheerful? But what's your proposition? How are you trying to get it across with the business? When it comes to tone of voice, is it more emotional? Is it extreme? Is it loud? Is it passionate? Is it hardcore? There was a double glazing window company ages ago where there was a gent and he was just pushing down windows and he was saying, you buy one, you get one free. You buy one, you get one free. And that tone of voice was very extreme, but at the same time, it was very passionate as well, because it was just like, you have to get this deal. This is the best deal on the planet. And of course, when it comes to look and feel, is it authentic? Some people, especially nowadays, use the term British in there. It's British made or it's handmade or anything like that. Sometimes in supermarkets, I always do laugh because you see cakes and it'll say it's hand finished and it's like, cool, so the machine made it and somebody just put a bit of sugar on it because, yeah, that's hand finished. Is it retro? Is it raw? Whatever. Have a think about, okay, how can you start again from the proposition, the tone of voice, the look and feel about your business? How can you start creating some emotional feelings about that? I always say put down 20 words on a piece of paper, because if you were to put 10, a lot of the time, the 10 that come to mind are kind of generic. And what you want to do is try and set yourself apart from competitors. And again, you can use generative AI to try and get some ideas. I always say if you're going to use a prompt, instead of 20, just say, give me 30 words, which would best describe the business based on what you've seen from the about us, from the bio, and everything else. And then, of course, the whole idea of your brand is to try and get people to start using your language. Now, I appreciate for the most part that is within the corporate space. You know, Google, we were all Googling stuff. And I mean, come on, Googling wasn't really a word, right? Same with ChatGPT. You know, you just add it at the end because we use ChatGPT. So most people just say just ChatGPT it. So again, it's getting people to use languages with your brand name in there. How can you do that? How can you get people thinking, okay, that just makes sense? And it's almost spreading your brand. It's making people aware of your brand as much as possible. I always say try and establish some objectives as well when you're thinking about your business strategy. What is it that you're trying to achieve? You know, again, what are you doing better than anybody else? Can you highlight the USPs, really shout from the mountaintops? Definitely, I'm doing something different. I can tell you what, with our coffee business, it is something different because we're doing grade A and we are charging a lot more than the average bag of coffee. So, you know, don't be scared to do that. Defining what is success. I mean, previously when we first started, obviously our success was selling a bag of coffee. And it was like, wow, people actually will buy expensive bags of coffee. We were just hoping it would work. Okay. And then what's the next step? It wasn't always about sales because once we started to have a steady stream of sales, it was from a social media perspective. Okay, how many people can we get to the website? How can we get people to stay longer on the website? Can we move away from just B2C to focus on B2B, as in business to business? Can we start supplying businesses with our coffee? And then for us now, it's, you know, can we start white labeling our own coffee? So we're always moving the bar of success because we've already hit it. We've already hit our goals. You know, what issues are opportunities can you tackle to achieve the success? Most businesses, well, tend to do a SWOT analysis, a strength, a weakness, opportunity, and a threat. And of course, your strength is, what are your USPs? What are your weaknesses? Of course, it could be a number of things. As a small business owner, you know, some of us on the team struggled with social media. So how do we improve everybody's social media skills on the team? Some people, it was getting on board with drinking coffee and understanding coffee. So sending us on coffee courses, you know, understanding how to pair coffee, because similar to wine, when you can have wine and olives or wine and cheese and so forth, it's the same with coffee. Coffee around the world have different pairing relationships, some with mango, some with berries, some with lime, X, Y, Z, right? It depends. So there's always those weaknesses, but we turn those into opportunities, which turned it into strengths. And now it's the same with threats. Some of the threats will never ever go away. Some of them are competitors, which again, we can never ever stop. Some of it could be climate change and so forth. But how do you try and mitigate as many of that as possible? So again, there's many prompts that you can write about trying to find out, okay, what's the SWOT of my business? What can I focus on? And so forth. I always try and leave this with people. Your brand is what people always say about you when you're not in the room. Think of it as people talking behind your back. Of course, when we hopefully promote the coffee business in a particular way, we want people to be like, this was the best coffee ever. We ask people to leave reviews. We ask people to recommend us and they get a particular discount if they do, and so forth. Because for us, we're always trying to not just be the best luxury brand ever, but we're always trying to create ambassadors or advocates for our brand as well. So this is a summary. AI as a strategic partner isn't just a tool. As I said, I use Copilot and ChatGPT. It helps us shape my vision, messaging, and decision making. I clarify our business identity using AI to redefine what our business stands for. I would always recommend that you use it for your values, your tone of voice, and how to position and frame the business. You can use it to define your ideal customer. As I said, always try and put in what you're trying to achieve, how much your products cost, who you are, and so forth. And it can try and give you some customer personas. And again, if you do have any customer data or segment audiences, even better. I know a particular coffee brand that they throw everything into AI. And what I mean by everything, even all their sales, because for them, they want to see exactly how they're doing month on month, week on week, and year on year. They overlay it with certain elements such as weather. So say, for example, they want to know how much coffee they can roast in a particular month based on the upcoming weather and how much they roasted last year. Okay, based on that, how many sales can I potentially experience or look to experience? And then that will help them understand what they need to do from a roasting perspective and to stop wastage. Personalization, literally, that is try and make your generative AI bot know who you are and know your business. Try not to give it random questions at the time of the day. So if you want to create one specifically for your business, that's what I do. We have one which is specifically for our business, which focuses everything on coffee. And then I have another one which I can ask it everyday questions, which do not pertain to the business, because what I'm trying to do is make sure this particular generative AI bot understands everything about the business. So any question I have is purely based on the business. And that can help with marketing. Definitely. It helps with writing posts, help with writing blogs, and of course, content on the website as well. So key takeaways, just to keep in mind, you can start small, just draft a mission statement or customer persona. Again, try and figure out, okay, is that going to be my customer, my ideal customer? And guess what? You don't only need one customer persona. You can have 3, 4, 5, as much as you want. The only issue is when you do have a lot of them, sometimes you lose sight of who your actual audience is. So try and make it as neat as possible. As I said, 2 or 3, try and understand, for the coffee business, this is someone who always wants a coffee subscription. Boom. This is somebody who wants to try something new. For them, they're just like, okay, maybe I'll push the boat out. And then somebody who's like, this is my ritual coffee. I can afford it once a month and I'm going to make it last. So we have different personas for different people. Again, we plug as much stuff into the generative AI bot from a messaging perspective, make sure it makes sense before we go out with it. And again, I recommend you do the same. You can ask it to build your content calendars as well. So once you decide, okay, this is the branding strategy, now it's a content strategy, this can definitely help. And obviously, as I said, if you do create one specifically for the business, it will understand, from a content perspective, what you need to focus on. It will understand who your competitors are and where their weak points are and how you can shine a little bit more. You can segment smarter. Again, customer behaviors or interests, whatever it may be. Because as I mentioned before, we're all emotionally different and we all react differently to different things. So different messaging is always going to be beneficial. I run a lot in marketing and we always do a lot of A/B testing. Sometimes we'll move headlines around. Sometimes we'll switch text up, or sometimes we may switch the image up, because everybody's going to relate to it differently. Especially if you guys are on Instagram or Facebook, TikTok, whatever it is, for the most part, we all have that kind of 2 to 3 second attention span. And it's not because our attention span is getting worse. It's just our attention span is more competitive, right? So if you see something that you don't like, you're just going to scroll because your mind is looking for something which is going to give you that dopamine fix. So, what is it that you can create on your page, on your socials, whatever it may be, to try and trigger different behavioral mindset in individuals? And of course, the last one is test and learn. As I mentioned before, there's a lot when it comes to A/B testing. I do appreciate my team is probably bigger than some of the businesses on this call, because there's, as I said, there's 3 of us. But at one point there was, just myself. So it was very difficult to try and do certain things like A/B testing, changing particular things on landing pages or looking to do certain bits in social media or what to focus on, because of course we're doing the sourcing and we're doing the selling. So I do appreciate sometimes it's hard. And this is why generative AI can definitely help give you some ideas, some quick wins of what you can focus on. But that's it from me. I said, if you ever want to get in contact, Digital Boost, more than happy to have a mentoring session, just to chit chat about the business, see how I can help a little bit if you're struggling. And of course, that's my LinkedIn if you ever want to follow. I do put stuff out on there which can help businesses quite a lot, whether it's funding or networking events. So feel free to reach out. But thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Ian. That was amazing. It is now time for the Q&A. So if you guys do have any questions, just pop them in the Q&A box. We've already had some come through, which is amazing. Ian, this question is, I think, in reference to one of your earlier slides at the beginning. What is the meaning of the audience is irrational in this context?
We're all different. Irrational is sometimes we don't think, we just do. Sometimes we don't think, we just buy. Sometimes, for example, when I'm really thirsty and I go into Sainsbury's, sometimes I'm irrational. I don't look at price. I'll just grab the closest water to me, for example. So everybody's going to be different. It just depends on the heat of the moment, what the person is like. Some people, when they go shopping online, for example, will open up 5 or 6 different tabs and do some research, while some people will be just panic buy and just go, okay, I'll just get that. We have a saying in PPC, pay-per-click, where you as a business can do one of 2 things. You can be an at-need or you can be a pre-need company. And an at-need, for example, you could be a plumber and someone has a burst main, right? Now, obviously, when I have a burst main and water's flowing into my kitchen, I'm panicking, I'm freaking out. So if I go on Google and the first ad I see is a plumber which says, I can fix a burst main right now, emergency call out, whatever, I'll just click on it, right? But you can also be a pre-need plumber, which is, are you thinking of doing an extension? See, the need isn't right now. The need is in the future. So it just depends. Irrational is sometimes people don't have control of themselves in the moment and just go with it. Or some people sometimes just go, okay, I don't have a preference. I'll just choose.
Thank you. Abdi has asked 2 questions. In reference to the first one, Abdi, I'd say maybe book in a one-to-one session, because I think you need to provide more context as it's about your business specifically. But your second question, how does branding work when it is B2B? Is it exactly the same as branding for B2C?
I mean, more or less. As at the end of the day, a company is buying your brand, yes, but you are still trying to influence someone within the company or individuals within the company on why to choose your brand. It's completely, okay, my coffee business, B2C and B2B, we got in B2B because we said, look, we'll just choose this fictional company at the moment. You service luxury clients, right? These guys are creme de la creme. They got over £1 million in a bank account. Spending a little bit on coffee should be no feat for you, because guess what? When somebody walks into the office, what's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to greet them and offer them a drink, right? So for you, you need to offer them the best coffee. If they're going to have coffee, if they're going to have tea, then they can have tea. But if they're going to have coffee, you need to give them the best coffee they've ever had, right? Because that is part of the wow factor that you as a business is trying to offer, whether it's a prospective client or it's a current client. So, and of course, that initial meet, greet, coffee can solidify a business or make sure that individual feels that their investment or whoever they're speaking to is secure. So when it came to speaking to a business about it, it was saying, look, this is what we offer. This is how we can help you secure business, win business, or whatever it is. But again, we were trying to influence them on why they should choose our coffee over somebody else's or the stuff that they pick up on the street.
Thank you. Do you use the paid version of ChatGPT? If you do you notice a significant difference between the free and paid version?
Yeah, there is. There's a noticeable difference between the paid version and the free version. We see it. That's why I kind of joke and call it the employee of the month, because when you pay it, it just it opens more intuitive thinking and more features. I mean, even the free version sometimes helps us, or it used to did help us, obviously with the text element, and then the picture element came in, i.e., the generation of AI images. Or sometimes we used to give it an image, let's say a packet of coffee, which we took a picture of, and then we would say blur out the backgrounds or whatever. So the free version does what it says on the tin, but if you pay for it, it does that little bit more. But again, it just depends on your budget as a business. Do you want to pay for it or not?
Thank you. Some of the questions that I didn't get to have disappeared for me. So if I haven't answered your question, please just send it through the Q&A box again. But our next question is, what strategies help create impactful branding in a very crowded product-based market segment?
I mean, it completely depends on the market that you're in. But again, what is your USPs? And again, thinking about it from a consumer perspective, emotionally, if you can think, how are they feeling? Why would they choose you? Everybody will make a purchase based on an emotional feeling. That is it. No one's just gonna go, okay, I'm just gonna buy this just because. It's very rare. People tend to make that emotional purchase, whether it is for clothes, whether it is for coffee, whatever it is. It's how do you influence that person to go, okay, this is why you should buy it, and this is the best thing for you, whether it's to try or to commit to a full-time subscription, or to buy every month or whatever it is. But how do you influence somebody to do this? Because at the end of the day, you're trying to get someone to choose you over a competitor. What would be the preference in choosing you? What is it that you are offering different? I do appreciate sometimes in certain markets it's very competitive, and it kind of just boils down to the price. So sometimes you have to be price led. But if you can be led on anything else which invokes that emotion, you can see on some websites where they just highlight, like, tick straight away before you get to the price, which is, look, these are 5 or 6 USPs. If you think of it from a clothing perspective, this shirt could be, I don't know, organic cotton. It could be sustainable. It could be stretchy. It could be whatever, right? But that would be the tick box. So me as an individual goes, okay, I'm not going to read the entire blurb, but I can see, 5 or 6 ticks of potentially what would trigger me to buy this particular shirt above the price. Boom, that's it. The price is there. I've compared it to, I don't know, a particular or another brand, but I'd have to read all the blurb, and the price is more or less the same. So sometimes it could just be down to that.
Thank you. What about security of company data? Are you careful about what you enter so that it is kept secure?
So working for a slightly bigger company, I would say yes, you have to be aware of what you put in there. When I do it from a coffee perspective, I do not care. I'm not putting customer data in there at all. All I'm doing is putting my company description, bio, whatever it is. Sometimes I'll put in sales data as well, because, I don't really care. If I was doing this much sales this year, I pray to God I'm not going to be doing the same amount of sales next year. So if they had previous sales data, then it's not really going to affect me that much. But looking at it from a BT perspective, I would say yes, please be very aware of what you put in there, because of course at any time you could say, okay, how is this particular company doing? Sometimes you can flirt with the idea of going, okay, if your business is called, I don't know, JCB, for example, you could just switch your, every time JCB is mentioned, and just put, I don't know, HSB instead. So, it doesn't matter if that data is on the platform, it's not technically identifying your company. And if you wanted, you can just switch up some of the sales figures, add an extra zero or whatever, another decimal point, and then hopefully whatever questions you're asking, ideally it's going to give you information on those statistics so you can at least get an idea, even if it's not a true reflection of it.
Thank you. I think this may be our last question. You may need more information on it, but I'll still ask just in case you can answer. Ian, can you explore a little more on having the chatbot? Someone offered to build me one for £500. I am a new business who is just turning 1 year old. Can I do this a cheaper way or build one myself with ChatGPT?
Yeah, I mean, look, you can build it with ChatGPT. There's also a website which is called There Is an AI for That. And you can do it that way. I guess it boils down to your time. Do you have the time to do it? Because when you're building an AI bot, you have to think about, okay, if a customer comes and asks a question, what questions can it answer? Where is it going to get all that data from? And then sometimes that is laborious. It can take days to do, depending on how much time you have. So it just depends. But as I said, ChatGPT or Copilot can help give you the foundations to build on. And then there's that website, there's an AI for that can give you more insight into chatbots that they can just give you to use. So it just depends.
Thank you. Okay, this is our final question. How can you set the privacy settings in ChatGPT?
That is something I've never done before. So weirdly enough, I would just ask ChatGPT that. How do I set the privacy settings in you? And see what it says.